Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to be summarizing part 2 of the Lugalbanda story where he goes and marches to Arata. Last week we talked about Lugalbanda and the mountain cave, and this week we're going to summarize part 2, Lugalbanda and the Anzu bird. If you remember last week, Lugalbanda marched with the army of Uruk under the leadership of the king Enmerkar, and along with 7 other warriors, semi-divine warriors. Lugalbanda was the 8th, and they got into the mountains, and he fell ill, and they left him there thinking that he was going to die. Well, he prayed to the gods, Utu, Inanna, and Nana, and they healed him, and he did some pious acts while there in the mountains. And the story sort of drifted off with him still in the mountains. Well, with Lugalbanda and the Anzu bird, the story picks up with him there in the mountains, and he interacts with this Anzu bird and receives a divine fixed fate from treating the Anzu bird well. And having his fate fixed, he joins the troops, and they reach Arata and besiege it, but they're thwarted, and so they eventually have to return. Someone has to return to Uruk to ask for help from Inanna, who has abandoned them to go back to Uruk, and Lugalbanda, with his newfound abilities, is the one to return. So let's go through the story, the second half of the Lugalbanda 2-part series, Lugalbanda and the Anzu bird. So, the story opens with Lugalbanda in the mountains, and he decides that he's going to find the Anzu bird with the hopes that if he treats him well, the Anzu bird will help him not only find the army, but that's essentially what he wants to do. He wants him to help him find the army. So when he arrives, he finds the Anzu chick, in the nest alone, and he takes care of it, and the text describes how he adorns it with certain types of cosmetics and does some things that we would think are odd. But nonetheless, he ornaments and feeds the bird, and then he decorates the nest as well. He then leaves to wait for the Anzu bird to come back. Well, when the Anzu bird comes near, he calls out to the chick, who does not respond, and the Anzu bird believes that someone has stolen his young. When he arrives, however, and sees the work of Lugalbanda, the Anzu bird states that he will fix whatever fate Lugalbanda asks for. Well, the Anzu bird makes several suggestions for which fates he should fix for Lugalbanda, and each one Lugalbanda refuses. So he says, I can give you riches, I can give you skills with weaponry, I can give you power over your enemies, I can give you abundance. And each time Lugalbanda says, no thanks. Well, the Anzu bird gets a little frustrated with him, and he says that he'll let Lugalbanda. The text says that if an ox gets unruly, it can be put back on its path, right? So he's saying you're getting off the path here, you're getting a little annoying to me, and I have every right to kind of slap you back into reality here. But you know what? You've done such a great thing, I'm gonna give you whatever you ask for. And Lugalbanda says, I want to be indefatigable, right? I want my arms and legs to never grow weary. He says, let the power of running be in my thighs. Let me never grow tired. Let there be strength in my arms. Let me stretch my arms wide. Let my arms never become weak. This type of indefatigability, this not becoming tired, is something that's picked up in other Mesopotamian kings. Shulgi, for example, talks about how he runs, he runs, these long distances with great speed, and he never gets tired. So this is a motif, but this is what Lugalbanda wants. He wants to be able to run. He wants to be able never grow tired. So the Anzu bird, fixes that fate, and he tells Lugalbanda to keep the source of his new abilities a secret. After that, the Anzu bird flies up and spots the army for Lugalbanda, and they part ways. So, Lugalbanda surprises the army. He appears in their midst, and together, after some, understandable chatter, the text says, how'd you get here? Where'd you come from? How'd you get across the water? All that stuff. They press on to Arata. However, they're thwarted as Arata is slinging these javelins and these clay missiles at them relentlessly. Well, Enmerkar, realizes that he's in a bad spot, the army's in a bad spot, and decides that Inanna has turned against him, that she has gone back home to Uruk. And so he starts going around to his warriors and to his soldiers, who will go back for me? Who will go back to Kulaba, go back to Uruk, and get help from Inanna? And nobody wants to go. Well, Lugalbanda volunteers. He volunteers to run all the way back to Uruk and ask Inanna for help. And after some initial problems with some of the other soldiers, he crosses 7 mountains in one day and arrives at Uruk just before midnight. Well, Lugalbanda tells Inanna at the end of the text about Enmerkar's complaint, how Inanna has left and how the least that she could do is help them get back to Uruk instead of just abandoning them there. And having heard Enmerkar's complaint through Lugalbanda, Inanna says that if Enmerkar overtakes and settles the city of Arata, in it's a somewhat cryptic passage, then the city will be his. If he settles it, overtakes it and settles it, it'll be his. And so Enmerkar does that, and the text ends talking about how Arata is now this gleaming city. It's, made of precious stones, and it has, this brightness about it. Anyhow, the city is now in this great shape, and ostensibly Enmerkar has taken it. So, when we think about both stories together, part 1 and part 2, and it does seem to me that they are connected as part 1 and part 2, the same story. Lugalbanda in part 1, Lugalbanda and the mountain cave, falls ill in the mountains. He prays to Utu, Inanna, and Nana, and then to Utu again. And they heal him, and he performs these pious acts and fulfills the will of the gods. And the story ends, as far as we know it breaks off at the end, but where we leave him is in the mountains. Well, in part 2, that's where Lugalbanda is. He's in the mountains, and he interacts with the Anzu bird and gets this blessing, or has this fate decreed for him. He makes it back, or he makes it to the army as they besiege Arata, and they get stifled. They stall, and they can't move forward, they can't move back, and Lugalbanda volunteers to make this long run in a very short period of time back to Uruk, and when he gets there, he receives instructions on how they can win, and ostensibly they do so. So that's the 2-part series about Lugalbanda and the march to Arata and what happens to him on the way. Next week we're going to pick up with a story that we've talked about a little bit, and it deals not so much with Lugalbanda, but with the king Enmerkar, and we're going to look at Enmerkar and the Lord of Arata, and again this conflict that shows up between these two. The story talks about the invention of writing amidst this competition going on between the two kings. So tune in next week for Enmerkar and the Lord of Arata, and hear more about these pre-flood kings that the Mesopotamians look back to as their legendary kings that they emulate. Thanks.